Good morning. As you can see, this morning I am in St. Thomas's. I'm actually sat facing the congregation. I'm imagining you all sat there. Next week I'll try and do something from St. Kentigern's. I thought it would make a change having this as a backdrop rather than my wall and my curtains. So today's story, today's gospel is a story of Good Shepherd. It is an old and familiar one. We all know it. And it's quite difficult to come up with something new. But it does seem somewhat appropriate to have it at this time of year, as our farmers and shepherds are in the midst of lambing season. When I got ordained, I was curate in a group of parishes in Snowdonia, which is sheep farming country. The first spring there, I was being eyed up by a lot of the farmers. Were they interested in my figure, my bubbly personality, my smile? No, it was my small hands. See, tiny hands. Had I ever done any lambing? Would I like to give it a go? I have done once. It was fine. I prefer not to do it again. However, I was being asked out of consideration for the sheep. It was far better for them to have a small hand helping out rather than the hand of a burly sheep farmer. In my second group of parishes, there was a couple, still is, called Di and Maggie, who run a small holding with a handful of sheep. They steadfastly refused to name the sheep on the basis that it would make life so much harder when they had to go to the slaughter. So they called them by numbers instead. The trouble was, the sheep started to recognize the number as their name. So Pedwar, 4, and Pimp, 5, used to come running when their names were called. Di and Maggie still are very good shepherds. Hi, by the way, if you're watching. The sheep knew them, and they knew their sheep by name. If a visitor was taken up to see the sheep, they would head in the opposite direction, unless the visitor had been clothed in one of Di or Maggie's jackets, with sheep nuts in the pockets, in which case you could get quite close, but then the sheep would sense the difference or hear the different voice and go off again. No matter what time of day or night, Di and Maggie seem to be able to sense if there is something wrong with the sheep or something that needs doing to keep them safe and happy. They knew the flock, they knew the land, they knew the dangers. The life of a shepherd is not particularly easy. It's not just walking over mossy green fields with a stick in your hand. It's late nights and early mornings. Sheep can be a bit thick, let's face it. If one falls over a cliff, it will easily lead all the others over the same cliff. Then they bleat, wanting to be rescued. When you try to rescue them, they fight back. They're also quite stubborn. If you've ever tried to get a sheep to do something it doesn't want to do, you may as well whistle into the wind. If they lie on their backs, especially when pregnant, they can struggle to get up. They get stuck in bramble bushes and try to wriggle through fences for that extra tasty bit of grass, despite being in a field full of grass. Over the years, sheep have been bred so that for their health, they have to be sheared every year. They don't like it, but otherwise the weight of wool can drag them down, and various mites and parasites start to infest them. So the sheep has to look after their general health, lead them into good pastures, help them when they get into trouble. The sheep respond to the love and care of the shepherd, although there are always a few stubborn ones who want to go their own way, even if it leads them into danger. So when God compares us to sheep, are we really that bad? Well, as humans, we tend to be good at following the group, especially in times of danger and frustration. Someone else is in charge, someone else is making the decisions. And for a while, we will usually follow blindly onwards, unaware of what pitfalls lie ahead. So I think my first question to you today is, who are you following? Are you following a wise shepherd or the other sheep? Who are you following? Are you following a wise shepherd or another sheep? Are you willing to change tracks if you notice you're heading the wrong direction? Or do you stubbornly insist on going your own way? Often as humans, we stay heading the same way because we don't want to admit that we may have made a mistake. We feel that if we do, others will laugh at us or blame us, which, let's face it, is true to a point. When we are unsure or we feel unsafe, we often look for someone to blame. So witness the various blame games happening in our current situation. Second homeowners, those who didn't order the PPE in time, the government for not testing enough, for not bringing the quarantine in soon enough, for keeping it going too long, and so on and so on. When you are stuck in a briar bush, playing the blame game is the equivalent of getting further entangled, instead of standing still and working a route out. That takes time, and the trouble is, it leaves you feeling helpless and out of control. And let's face it, most of us like being in control. But sometimes we just need to wait for someone else to work out the escape route, without blaming them for why we've ended up where we have ended up. You are here and this is now. There is no going back. If the current situation is making you tired or grumpy or short-tempered with those around you, look for a source of calm in the turmoil and take your lead from there, not from the bleating sheep of the press or of the internet. Where are you getting your lead from? Are you following a wise shepherd or the other sheep? It's a question we need to keep asking ourselves, as Christians in particular. Where are we getting our lead from? The fact is, over the centuries, people have searched for a point of stability, a point of calm in chaos, a place of rest or of shelter. For us as Christians, that point ought to be found in our God. Often, if we look back over the pattern of our lives, often His faithfulness and His presence in times of need can be discerned. We may not be aware of it as we go through those times, but when we look back, we can often see it. It does not mean that we are not in the storm or ever were in the storm or in the chaos. We are. But it does mean we can trust in our God, in our Good Shepherd, in the faithful one, who will shelter and protect us, who will show us the paths to walk in, and who will lead us onwards into calmer times. The Lord is my shepherd. Which shepherd are you following?